Recently, I'm wanting to sew all the summer patterns, and today we're making an older unfettered design, the wrap top. I have sewn a size small with no adjustments, and it's great with high-waisted bottoms. This is a woven pattern, but why not make it in a knit? Both of my version I've sewn used low stretch terries, so they're soft and comfortable with just that extra little bit of sewing ease that sometimes comes in handy. We'll be sewing this together from start to finish, from the back ties, the center facings, and the bottom elasticated band. Let's sew it now. Beginning with our tie pieces, fold each tie right sides together and pin the long edges. Sew the long edges from one side to the other with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Then I'll trim each of my seam allowances. And turn each tie right side out. To finish one short end of the tie for both pieces, I'm going to just tie it in a knot. Here are the right sides of one set of front and back pieces. To make them the corresponding back pieces, we're going to add the ties, adding them at the markings transferred from the pattern piece. Placing the unknotted raw edges of the ties right sides together with those markings and pinning in place. Then we'll baste those ties in place to secure. Now we can place our front pieces right sides together with each back piece. Pin the tops and the side seams. Then we'll sew each of the side seams and each of the top seams with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, finishing those raw edges if your fabric needs. To hem the sleeves on both sides, if you're working with a fabric that frays, you're going to want to finish those raw edges all the way around. Then we can fold the edges of the sleeve fabric to the wrong side by the hem allowance of 1¼ inches and pin in place. Then I'm going to edge stitch close to the inner edge all the way around to complete the hem, repeating for both sleeves. Place two corresponding facing pieces right sides together and pin the shoulder seam. Sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and press the seam open. Then place your facing right sides together with the center front and center back, aligning the shoulder seam and pin in place. Then we'll sew the facing in place from the bottom edge of one bodice piece all the way across the shoulder to the opposite bottom edge of the opposite piece with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Once the facing is sewn in place, we're going to understitch, flipping the facing over the seam that we just created, then sewing that seam allowance to the facing from one bottom edge all the way around to the opposite bottom edge. Now that that's understitched, we'll turn our facing to the inside of the garment and give those center front and center back edges a good press. So here I have my facings pressed to the inside of the garment, and I've also added pins to secure it in place. If your fabric does fray, you'll also want to finish the raw edges of the facing on the inside all the way across. I'm going to edge stitch close to the inner edge of the facing all the way around the center front and center back. Repeat to create both front and back bodice sets. On the bottom of the bodice pattern piece, there's a notch indicating the overlap points for the front and back bodice pieces. Mark those notches onto the fabric. Doing this for the front and back pieces for both sets. For the bottoms of the front bodice piece, I'll place my right bodice piece over the left, aligning the notches on the bottom of both front bodice pieces and pinning in place. Now that my front bodice pieces are connected along the bottom edge, I'll repeat for the back pieces, placing the right back piece over the left and pinning in place along the bottom, aligning the notches. Baste the pinned sections in place for the front and back. Place the front and back band pieces right sides together and pin the side seams. Sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and press the seams open. I've also gone ahead and folded my band in half, wrong sides together all the way around. We're going to pin it to the bottom of the bodice. Place your band right sides together with the bottom edge of the front and back bodice pieces, aligning the side seams and pin in place all the way around. Now we'll sew all the way around the bottom band, leaving a gap in your stitches for the elastic. I've cut a piece of 1 inch wide elastic according to the elastic guide pattern piece. Now I'll secure one short end and guide it through the casing through the gap I left in my stitches. Overlap the short ends of the elastic slightly and sew in place to secure. Draw your elastic entirely inside the casing, then we can sew closed the gap in the stitches. Following the original stitching line. Finish your raw edges together all the way around if preferred. Tie the center back ties together and the blouse is complete. Thank you for watching this sew along. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future sewing tutorials, and I'll see you in the next video.